Can everyone hear me? All right, awesome. All right. Excuse me. Welcome to Bringing the Pwn to You, Interesting Honeypot Trends. My name is Elliott Brink. I'm at Twitter at eBrinkster. Right now I'm a security and privacy consultant for McGladrey LLP. My primary responsibilities are performing internal and external penetration tests, as well as some social engineering. I'm honeypot crazy, and my coworkers agree. And this is my first InfoSec talk, so I'm very happy to be here at GrrCON with you guys, right? Yeah. I'm cramming through a lot of stuff, so I'll be available for questions on the patio or here afterwards. I want to make sure the next person has enough time to set up, but yeah. And just generic disclaimer, all words are my own and do not reflect the official views of my employer. So 10-second agenda. For those that don't know, I'm going to explain what Honeypot is. I'm going to explain why people run them, and then I'm going to spend the majority of my time on my research and results and the kind of crazy things that I found. So a quick introduction. A honeypot is a intentionally vulnerable or fake system designed as a trap for potential attackers. Usually there is no good interaction with a honeypot. Now, any interaction that is outside of the expected reasonable use cases isn't necessarily bad, but it is an alert and is generally something that should be investigated. Traditionally, these are used very well on the external-facing side of the network, but there are internal applications as well. I'm not discussing those in this talk. And they're a great method of detection of attacks aside from a traditional IDS and firewall. So why do we run one? Well, personal reason is fun. It's the best reason to do anything. And they have applications in the corporate environment as well. Detection of previously stated detection of outside attacks aside from an IDS and firewall, with internal detection scenarios as a possibility. And finally, they're used very heavily in academia for research of malware that's spreading on the net. So enter Kippo. Kippo is great. It's a medium interaction SSH honeypot that's written in Python. It's based on an older honeypot called Kajoni, and it emulates a full SSH login and system. You can brute force against a Kippo system, and it will record the usernames and passwords in MySQL. If you log in, it has all the familiar commands, including lscat, echo, basically any user command. And it records user interaction shells as well. And it's on GitHub. And then I like to add Kippo Graph. It provides a really good visual representation. It pulls data from the MySQL database, makes pretty charts and graphs based on libchart. And Kaniaras, I'm going to butcher his name. Sorry, man. He has a great site dedicated to honeypot stuff as well, and you can find it there. So this was the Mark 1. Mark 1 was Kippo running on a Raspberry Pi. Why? It's low power, it's single use, it's a cheap appliance, and the fourth bullet is because Raspberry Pis are awesome. Customization. So what you want to do, what I wanted to do is I wanted to make a custom system that looked pretty beefy. So I wanted to edit the CPU info and mem info. So I went to my buddy that works IT at a very large company, and I said, can you send me the CPU info and mem info of something pretty powerful? You know, something with like 2 8 cores. He's like, what are you emulating? I'm like, well, I would like to have a honeypot that emulates a core banking server. He goes, hang on. He sent me these files. He goes, well, here's a system that has 4 10-core processors, 80 threads, and half a terabyte of RAM. Pretty juicy looking target. It was pretty awesome to have those in there. Editing a host name, you know, pick your favorite core banking provider to make it look good. And a pre-logon banner. This is particularly more for the corporate side. If you have a sophisticated attacker that's going to attack this honeypot, and they're looking at a pre-logon banner that says my company X, this is a restricted system, that's usually the kind of modifications you want to make there. So the first 3 months. So I was running this at home. I had about 250,000 password guess attempts. Anywhere from 40 to 10 correctly guessed root. The password was root, and the username was root, and the password was 123456. Super awesome. And 40 to 10 were correctly guessed a day. Now, you can see from this graph that's kind of interesting. Right at the beginning, when this thing went live, it's very evident that there are groups out there that are very good at detecting when new hosts hit the net, and then they go and they investigate those. So that first couple weeks is likely a couple of groups hitting that, saving the data, leaving. And the rest is just general grind of the internet, just mass brute forcing no matter what. Top 10 usernames attempted. Root's obviously the heavy hitter, as well as admin and some generic accounts. My favorite, though, you see the third one, root/*12345. Well, someone had a combined username and password word list and obviously wasn't using Hydra correctly. Whoops. And then the top 10 passwords identified, typical stuff, admin password 123456. The third password is the correct password, but admin's obviously number one. But then I saw one item in here that at first I looked at it and I go, I don't know what this is. !QAZ@WSX. And I go, well, that doesn't seem very normal. And then I look down and I realize externally facing brute forcing for pattern-based passwords, I guess they're not as clever as we actually think they are, because these guys had all sorts of entries that were attacking. Now this is the last hop of the attack. And I say last hop because truly this is the last place that I know where the attack's coming from. China was the heavy hitter. India, USA, Russia, Romania. I gotta give France some credit. The 2% of France was this one host that tried on and off for a couple of weeks, and I don't know what, but 123456 was not in their dictionary. So they made a pretty nice chunk in there. I was really impressed and kind of disturbed. So user input. This is what I was waiting for. So this is a system that's designed to be able to log in and run commands, and it looks like a normal Unix system. And people started going on and logging on and downloading files, and I thought that was great. But IP port, folder, file, I'm going to hack back. I'm going to go and I'm going to look at where they're downloading these things from. I'm just going to see what I find. Enter HFS. This is the common scenario where they were downloading these files from something called HTTP file server 2.5 or 2.3 beta. They usually contain just generic names files, DOS monitor up there. This is all malware, and actually HFS is included as well. And just another example screenshot of a couple of these. These ended up, being fairly simple. And I just started browsing around and combing through, and I was just kind of curious. And then I hit this, which was awesome. It was an HTML file. I assumed the guy just renamed it, and it was some kind of PHP backdoor, like UGDevil or something like that. No, he was conveniently keeping track of all the people that he had hacked. IP port, username, and password. A couple hundred of those. It was a pretty nice find if I was a black hat. And interestingly enough, they had some word list embedded into their malware, so I'm like, yeah, I'm going to grab that. That's cool, I want that. And once I saw these two things, I knew what I had to do. I just had to go, and I just wanted to download all of the things. So anytime someone came in and they were wgetting a file from their offshore server, I was just wget that whole site right now. Oh, and a Google hack? Yeah, and I indexed those too as well. The 93,000, there was more about 10,000, I want to say, because they're constantly popping in and out. So here are the findings. These are the three most common things that I was finding. I would find just generic Linux local root exploits anywhere from 2007 to 2012. But it's fun because they log in as root, they download a local root exploit, and then they run it. So they got root, which seems pretty cool, and I don't know what that is, but it seems pretty elite to me. Some EXEs, there were Windows, DOS, distributed DOS tools, as well as some of the more craftier things were some SSH backdoor scripts that were written in Perl that they would try and upload into a web directory. And so here's an example of just kind of a generic one, server.exe, super generic. And VirusTotal had, an insanely high amount of detection ratio. This is obviously, malware. But then some of these guys had actually really interesting toolkits. Because here, later I found a file called FreeBSD. And originally I thought, well, that's just named there to blend in. That's just going to be something they're going to load on a Linux system. Well, it turns out it was a ELF 32-bit file, the FreeBSD 8.4. So some of these guys had pretty sophisticated toolkits, which is pretty impressive. And some of them have server.exe, and they're running local root exploits while they already have root. They're getting root cubed. Root squared. And then I also found this too. A text file that had 1,000 SSH usernames and passwords. About 90% of them were root. And the last modification date was about a couple days before I downloaded it. So there's a fairly good chance that most of these systems, I would be happy if 50 of these systems were actually truly vulnerable systems. And this was found in the same place that they're downloading their malware from, and it's just lazy note-taking, really. I mean, you don't want to, if I'm a competitor and I find this, you've got turf wars going on between different groups. So if I see this and I'm a black hat and I know who I'm attacking, I go, oh well, I'm just going to flip the coin on all of these, and now I own all your stuff. So after this, I expanded. How remarkable it's VPS. I've been out of the VPS game for a little bit, but I was really surprised how cheap they've gotten. I mean, you can get $1 a month, 20 gigs of space, 500 gigs of transfer, and a dedicated IPv4 address and Ubuntu running an OpenVZ. So the cheap VPS solutions are absolutely perfect for adding a ton of sensors over the internet. And I wouldn't get into it in this talk, but I actually got some really interesting results from once I expanded out. I'm in Chicago. The rest are VPSs. It was actually really interesting to see which ones got attacked more. I don't know why, but Atlanta was just overburdened. So I feel really bad for that system. But all the others had trickle in of stuff, but Atlanta just got, that VPS was constantly swamped. I had to reboot it, once a week. So more sensors meant more data. As of last week, I hit about 4 million password guess attempts between all 6. And I've filtered through some of them. It's about 250,000 unique. That doesn't include word lists that I've found embedded in their malware that they've left on their systems. So, yay, those are nice little grabs. And the number of user interaction downloads has skyrocketed because I have more sensors and I can collect more data. It also means more countries are attacking me. I have more malware to analyze, and I have way more passwords than I know what to do with. Makes a great, it's data. It's great to have more files. So what's next? This was kind of just meant as a quick talk. There are a couple guides out there on the internet for writing an up-to-date, there's a couple of guides out there on the internet to set up Kippo honeypots. Some of them are a little dated. I'm going to write the next one. And after that, I'm going to start getting sensors across the world. Now, VPS is pretty cheap here in the States. I've looked at some other countries. Some of them are actually quite expensive. I actually tried to buy a VPS in the UK, and they suspended my account. So that was kind of unfortunate. The reason you're, I said, why has my account been closed? They said, we cannot disclose a reason at this time. I was great. Give me my money. I'm done. So once I start getting sensors across the world, I'm going to be able to correlate types of attacks based on a country, because I only have a representation of what's going on in the USA. So I've got 65% of the last hop is coming from China if you're an IP that's registered in ARIN and shows up in the United States. So I wonder what's going to happen when I get a VPS in Hong Kong. Am I going to see the US attacking Hong Kong? I'm going to see Hong Kong attacking Hong Kong? Probably both. I'm going to add some more malware analysis as well. Admittedly, I'm not the greatest at this. If you want a bunch of crazy malware, tweet me. I'm not responsible if your box gets owned. Yeah. So please let me know on Twitter if that's something anyone here in the audience is interested in and wants to play with some malware. And lastly, I'd love to get some different types of sensors. Shell shock was a big deal a month ago. Immediately, about 48 to 96 hours after the fact, someone threw up a honeypot that emulated a vulnerable system for shell shock. I tried my hardest to get that thing working, and I just didn't have enough time over the weekend. But soon I'll start publishing more interesting results about having a shell shock honeypot. And lastly, just a web application honeypot, because again, I'm only on the SSH level. I'm only on service 22, and I'm only emulating a single box. Honeypots are great, and different types of sensors means you're going to start to record different types of attacks. All right. Well, thank you, GrrCON. If anyone has questions, I'll be available here or on the patio, and I'm on Twitter as well. So thank you very much, guys. Please feel free to come and ask me questions.